After the end of the Second World War, a false impression of the fighting in Europe emerged. One that viewed the campaign as a kind of Allied parade from the beaches of Normandy to the Rhine and then into Germany. It was one victory after another, in other words, the inevitable triumph of a better equipped and more powerful Allied force. But in war, even the winning side usually has its share of catastrophes. What happened to the officers and men of the 106th Infantry Division should change the way we think about the end of the war in Europe. The 106th Infantry Division, which was activated in March of 1943, was a pack of raw draftees thrown together with a handful of experienced officers and NCOs. It had no real tradition, either all regular army or National Guard. The 106th arrived in Belgium in early December and was immediately transferred to the front lines to a sector of the front so quiet and uneventful that the US troops had started calling it the Ghost Front. The 106th held a line of 21 miles, more than twice the recommended breadth for a force of that size. It was thought to be a perfect place for a green unit to get acclimated to the rigors of life in field and the routine of frontline duty. A little before 5 a.m. on the 16th of December 1944, a selective artillery bombardment began falling on forward positions on the 106th Division on the Schnee-Eifel, moving gradually back to the division's headquarters. This attack did not do much damage to the troops or fortifications, but did cut up most of the telephone wires the American Army used for communications. General Hasso von Manteuffel, the commander of the 5th German Panzer Army, had found an undefended gap running between Weckerath and Kopscheid. Into the gaps between the villages marched the 18th Volksgrenadier Division. This movement would coincide with the southern advance of the 18th around the right flank of the Schnee-Eifel. The 18th Volksgrenadier Division was formed in September of 1944. The name Volksgrenadier was given to a type of German army division formed in the autumn of 1944 after the double loss of Army Group Center to the Soviets in Operation Bagration and the 5th Panzer Army to the Allies in Normandy. The name itself was intended to build morale, appealing at once to nationalism and Germany's older military traditions. The Volksgrenadier divisions emphasized defensive strength over offensive strength by using only 6 line infantry battalions instead of the normal 9 for infantry divisions. The units also had a higher proportion of submachine guns and light automatic weapons like the new Sturmgewehr 44. The divisions were organized around a small group of hardened veteran soldiers, NCOs and officers, and then bulked out with anything the German replacement army could supply, for example, jobless personnel of the German Navy and the German Air Force. The German double envelopment came as a complete surprise for the US forces. Following the German attacks sweeping around their positions, the 2 regiments of the 106th Division, the 422nd and 423rd, had remained in place. Since communication with the division headquarters was unreliable, the Americans had remained for the most part inert. It was only at 2 a.m. on the 18th of December that they received an order to break out to the west. At 10 a.m. that morning, the breakout began. By nightfall, both regiments had covered 3 miles to the base of the ridge, but came under assault gun and anti-aircraft gunfire. 4th Grenadiers advanced from the flanks, firing small arms. The Americans were under fire from all sides and running low on ammunition. At this point, the commander of the 422nd decided to surrender the American forces in the pocket. At 4 p.m., this surrender was formalized, and the 2 regiments of the 106th Division and all their supporting units, approximately 7,000 men, became prisoners of the German army. A different grouping of some 500 men surrendered later, but by 8 a.m. on the 21st of December, all organized resistance by American forces in the Schnee-Eifel pocket ended. This marked the most extensive defeat suffered by the US forces in the European theater. And now let's see some background factors. By contrast with the 106, other American units involved in the Schnee-Eifel fight had characteristics that should have given them an advantage. For example, the unit protecting the division's northern flank, the 14th Mechanized Cavalry Group, or SMG. An SMG was a high-mobility, high-firepower regimental side formation designed for holding the flanks of a division, corps, or army. They had high levels of aggression and a tight esprit de corps based on the army's long-standing and heroic cavalry tradition. Caught by surprise in the middle of December, the men of the 106 did what soldiers in such a predicament have done from time immemorial. Depending on their precise location and post at the moment, they tumbled out of bed, or they ran into each other in their haste, or they desperately tried to get to the ice-cold engines in their jeeps to turn over, or they fired wildly in every direction. Their officers, from the divisional commander Major General Allen W. Jones on down, never did get their troops in hand or under control. The result was a complete lack of cohesion and fighting power. Much of the division tried to run. The German units didn't assault the positions of the 106 directly. The rapid link-up of the 2 German pincers behind the Eifel encircled 2 entire US infantry regiments of the 106th Division, approximately 7,000 men in all. They were now surrendered, out of contact with neighboring units, and cut off from supplies. They would surrender en masse and on the orders of their regimental commanders on the 19th of December, day 4 of the German operation. To sum up, a green, newly arrived US infantry division of questionable fighting power had to face the last great German offensive of the war. Indeed, it was the last great offensive in the West. German generals had been planning and conducted this sort of violent assault for months, and in the opening days of December, fighting in the Ardennes, they did it one last time. It is difficult to imagine any other standard US infantry division, its flanks caved in, German panzers rampaging in its rear, doing much better than the Golden Lions.